Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you everyone who's joining us online. This morning was a phenomenal session with the Chancellor and many others. You heard how economic transition is what's needed for us to get to where we are, to where we need to go. And you also heard how finance is a critical part of the transition. The other critical part of the transition is if you need a new economy, you need new people with new skills to actually fuel the economy. You also want to make sure those jobs go to the right places and right people, so you need a just transition. So what we're going to talk to right now about, this panel is about the skills gap that is in the economy to fuel the transition that is required. We feel there's not enough being discussed. That's why we gathered a phenomenal panel for you to discuss how we can accelerate this change. You know, my favorite panel is just after lunch, normally. So we have tried to keep this panel really short. It's 45 minutes and boom, boom, boom. You'll hear from 7 phenomenal people, and you'll remember every word of it. And so we have a fantastic panel, but we want to get started with a person who's been thinking about the intersection of climate and development for a long time. Jennifer Morgan, all of you know Jennifer Morgan. Jennifer's been not only thinking about climate, she's the State Secretary and a climate envoy of Germany, but how development and climate needs to go together, how we need to bring development to the countries that need it, and how they need to do it in a green way. So how can we grow in a green way? Jennifer.
Thank you, Ani. It's great to be here, and I know I have 3 minutes. So I'm going to dig in, because I think, you know, on the one hand, we are facing one of the most profound transitions the world has ever seen. And then, as you said, there's this aspect that has gotten little consideration, which is at the core, which is people, which are jobs, which is where are the millions of the skilled workers who will put the green transition from plans into action, and how are we going to scale up the youth to drive that economic development and growth around the world. I wanted to leave you just with a few numbers. I mean, right now we have 16.2 million global renewable energy jobs in 2023, which is up from 13.7 million in 2022. They look impressive, but obviously this is still very far from being enough, and it's not in enough countries, very focused in a few number of countries. Experts have calculated the green skills gap in the green economy globally raises up to 7 million by 2030. And we know that, just to take one continent of Africa's nearly 420 million youth aged 15 to 35, 1/3 are unemployed and discouraged, another third are vulnerably unemployed, and only 1 in 6 has wage employment. So how do we bring these things together? This is the task. And I think the transition to the green economy, well, that won't succeed unless we have the greater investment in skills and jobs. And the actual transformation and development of so many important countries around the world will not succeed unless this becomes part of their growth story, of their green economic transition. So what do we need? Number one, a green jobs economy narrative, which really shows those economic chances that are there job by job. Number two, whole of government strategies are needed. So there's an opportunity with the nationally determined contributions that are coming. Number three, practical education and reskilling. Let's get very practical about all of this. And number four, new market-based financing and business models. So finally, I think those are the things that we need. I'm sure the panel will tell us how to get there. And I think that, you know, these nationally determined contributions coming up, national climate plans as normal people talk about them, I think these have to be at the heart, and they have to bring together the economic and the social dimension into these and the skills dimensions there. We need more connecting of these dots. We need the initiatives. We need to build up these capacities, and I'm very, 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 very pleased that we're moving on it. So let's get to work.
You heard it from Jennifer, so let's get to work. Can I just invite my fantastic panel? This is such a short session, they don't get to sit even. Please. In my organization, I work at WRI. I'm the CEO of WRI, and we work about 45 countries across the world. I just want to repeat what Jennifer just said. Everywhere when we meet with leaders of those countries, I want to talk to them about climate. They want to talk to me about jobs. That is the defining, if you can talk about climate through jobs, they want to listen to you. So I want to start with the global picture of what's happening. We're very lucky Pablo Vieira is here. Pablo Vieira is to be deputy minister in Colombia. Now he leads a phenomenal partnership that works about 200 countries across the world called NDC partnership, NDC-P, which helps countries across the world in helping with their ambitious NDC. Pablo, from your perspective, what you're seeing from countries to accelerate this jobs transition?
Thank you very much, Annie, and good afternoon, everyone. It's very clear that developing green skills will help to ensure that no one is left behind, and it will guarantee a just transition as countries implement their climate commitments. But, as it has been said, there is a critical gap between the urgent need to transform our economies and to build resilience and the skills needed to actually do it. When looking at countries' current climate commitments through their NDCs or their national climate plans, few are actually integrating explicitly skill development into these plans. While nearly all countries reference capacity building in their NDCs, only 40% of them talk about explicitly skills. And what this tells us is that even though countries understand the need for capacity development, they haven't really understood how to unpack it, what to understand, what that actually means. And they need to understand that skill development will logically be a fundamental element of driving that just transition to allow countries to develop effectively. In particular, developing countries need support to do this. They need to understand what are the skills that they need, and they need to mobilize the support to do it in an effective way. When we look at the NDC partnership specifically, out of the 97 countries that we're supporting, only 37% of these countries have included requests associated with jobs and employment opportunities, and less than 10% specifically about green skills. Additionally, those who have committed to green skills have been very unsuccessful in mobilizing support for this. So less than half of these requests have been supported. So what do we do now? As Jennifer said, a critical moment is the next round of NDCs, the NDCs 3.0, that need to be delivered next year. This is not only an opportunity to accelerate action and raise ambition, but to align skills development and the climate agenda. Referencing explicitly skill development in the NDCs as a critical element of what we call means of implementations of those NDCs is fundamental. And to do this, we have developed, on the one hand, working closely with many of the partners in the table, the NDC 3.0 Navigator, which basically allows countries to understand how to strengthen the ambition, the quality, the implementability of their NDCs. And we have worked closely with GIZ, with WRI, with ILO, with UNDP to identify those critical elements in terms of skills development that need to be included in the NDCs. And we also have a specific initiative to support the development of these NDCs, the NDC Partnership's Global Call on NDCs 3.0 and long-term strategy. That allow countries to look at their long-term strategies and their NDCs and find the ways to best implement them. To close, just let me say that what we need is to encourage countries to include explicit reference to green skills in their NDCs. Because when we talk about implementability of these new climate commitments, this will depend on the capacity of countries, the capacity of the private sector to quickly develop the necessary skills for a quick and effective transformation of their economies. And we need a global effort to do it. We need to come together. The partnership brings more than 200 partners. We need others to come to the table, the private sector, and those who have the necessary resources to support this so that countries can advance this.
Thank you very much, Pablo. I think two things to very much remember from what Pablo said. This is the first time countries are actually explicitly thinking about green skills, but not many. That's what the main message is. Let's go to a very important country next, Brazil, which is in everyone's mind. We are lucky to have Paula Machado, Director from the Secretariat of Climate Change in Brazil Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. Brazil is chair of the G20 and also the Belém COP that all of us are looking forward to next year. Also, Brazil has one of the greenest energy sources because of hydro. But your green transition is very different from other countries. Anna Paula, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here and to be part of these relevant discussions. It will be very challenging to speak of it in 3 minutes. I had prepared a speech and I had to throw it away, so I'll try to do my best with so much going on in Brazil. But it is...
We're sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I'm happy to be allowed to speak about such a complex and worrisome topic from a lens of opportunity. Because I think that reshaping our economies opens space for reshaping our societies in a more equitable way. So in Brazil, I was asked to speak a little bit about the Brazilian perspective in this matter. So Brazil is a country that has been through a deindustrialization process for the last 4 decades, which has generated a lot of income concentration, poverty, and inequality. So for Brazil, speaking on green skills development is the first insight for these discussions that we must link to the development strategies of the country, mid-term and long-term. So we have a new policy called the New Industry Brazil that talks about reindustrializing the country, and it's not only based on energy, because as you said, we have a renewable energy structure in Brazil, but we have many other challenges. So we need to develop sustainable agriculture and also high added value industries such as the health complex, digital industries and infrastructures. The challenges are multiple and we need a huge effort on capacity building and professional capacity. So that's the first insight for this debate that I would like to suggest is that we think broader, thinking about human capital for a sustainable development, generating high added value in a complexified economy. That's what will bring developing countries such as Brazil to a new level of well-being, in my view. The second insight, being really brief, I promise. On the preparations for COP30, I've been to the Amazon talking to the community and asking them what do they expect for COP30 in Brazil. And I have felt a lot of dissatisfaction about how, in their words, the international debate values more the forest than the people in it. So, as Jennifer said, we think COP30 will be an important place to place people in the center of the debate, which is highly linked to our discussions today. And the second insight that I would like to bring to these discussions is that on top of generating new skills, we also need to value the jobs that are being invisible, but really relevant for the society as a whole. So the taking care of people, the economy of care, and taking care of the environment, ecosystem services, these are all things that we must incorporate in our debates, how we can mainstream adding these values into our accounting systems and generate well-being for people that are doing such an important job. So we don't have the solutions, but I think today we are starting discussions on how to put this topic high in the political agenda nationally through the NDCs, and international to the international climate change discussions in FCCC, and I hope we'll get to COP in Belém with the discussions more elaborated. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I must say that I think extra thanks to Brazil what it's doing, and we all are looking forward to Brazil setting a standard with the NDC, what your president said about 1.5 degree. I just want to underline 2 things you said that that every country's transition is different. Brazil's transition is different, and the other thing which Jennifer also pointed out, that as soon as you start talking about the jobs and skills agenda, it is also the development and climate agenda has to come together, which is what you just underlined. I just want to think, as we think about it, and I'm sure we'll hear from Jochen and others about this. Let me go to ILO, which is an agency, UN agency, that looks about this topic across the globe and has been an advocate for workers and labor for years to come. We have Mia Seppo with us here, Assistant Director General for Jobs and Social Protection. Mia, how does this transition look from a global perspective?
Thank you for the question. And thank you, Pablo, for making such a passionate case for why skills is an enabler of NDCs. So let me build on that. Because the minister was talking about the complexity, and I think one of the complexities lie in the fact that climate, environment, and skills policies don't usually talk to each other. And this is something we actually need to break in order to really move forward. Skills policies need to be linked with environment and climate policies, further linked with both social protection and employment policies. And this is complex for any government and for the multilateral system as well. So the just transition then, a fair and inclusive transition, really assumes these integrated policy packages. And that is a slogan that we have to break down into very practical action with skills as the enabler. So what are we looking at in terms of global support? We're looking at helping countries with the policy coherence. We're looking at better systems for skills anticipation for greener economies. And we're looking at an enhanced skills offer, and that's both initial training in terms of TVET. It's also lifelong learning, a very key principle when it comes to green skills. And it's, of course, workplace learning as well. And not to forget that the way the data looks, it's going to be hard for women to get the new green jobs. So there needs to be a very intentional focus on training that reaches women and brings women into STEM. There also needs to be evidence that we respond with a skills offer which is relevant for industry and labor markets so that we really get young people into those future-oriented green jobs. Now, for this initiative, what is it going to take to make it different? Of course, it's going to take the data and data-driven intelligence. It's going to take funding and collaboration, including with industry. It's going to take way early skills anticipation in terms of not starting to look at reskilling workers when factories are closing, but way in advance to really think through what is that journey that needs to be traveled. A green transition will only be successful if it's human-centered. And a human-centered transition always has to put skills at the center of it.
Thank you very much. I think the point you made about being good for industry, it has to be sector-specific, it has to be people-specific, but also it's beyond education. It has to be training during lifetime of workers, which is, we need to differentiate that. Thank you very much. Let's go to the private sector. Let's see how the demand side looks like of this curve. We have Toni Beukes here. Toni is the ESG head of Hyphen Namibia. Hyphen works in hydrogen and many other high technology. Toni, please.
Thank you so much for having me today. Maybe just as a quick glance, the Hyphen project, for those who are not familiar with it, is Namibia's first gigawatt scale project. We look to produce 2 million tons of green ammonia annually from 2030, and that's through about 7 gigawatt of wind and solar and about 3 gigawatt of electrolyzer capacity. So very significant in the Namibian context. We're looking at about a $10 billion investment, which is roughly the equivalent of the Namibian GDP. And that's part of the challenge. We estimate about 15,000 people will be employed during the construction phase and 3,000 during the operations phase. And we've set ourselves a very ambitious target of 90% Namibianization on that employment number. But that's going to be really, really challenging because there is no readily available skills base in the country. We're looking at a 38% youth unemployment rate. And at that, you can imagine with a $10 billion GDP, what the industrial skills base looks like. So very challenging indeed. The World Bank recently did an assessment of just the, together with the Namibian government, an assessment of the state of the education system, particularly on how we could gear it toward the green hydrogen sector. And it came up with a number of recommendations. And I won't go into too much detail because we don't have time, but there, the one points on data. There is still a lack of data because a lot of, this is new, developers such as ourselves and other developers are still going through the process of determining exactly what the skill levels are that we need on the project. And there's also a lack of data in country on just what are the available skills, particularly within the unemployed workforce. There are general concerns around especially within the TVET segment. And this is important because for the construction phase, we anticipate at least 50 to 60% of the workforce to come from within that segment, particularly NQF levels 4 to 5. So that's your artisans and so on. There is a general concern around the level of the quality of the workforce, and again, because of trainers haven't necessarily been exposed to industry a lot, and again, it goes back to that low industrial base. There's generally a lack of specialized courses, and just the capacities are just too small to be able to deliver what we need within the time that we need it. And then there's an interesting statistic. Namibia has, as of 2023, at least 67,000 unemployed graduates. That's a significant number, so that's another key challenge for us, because we have a lot of qualifications, but we don't have the skill that are required for placement. And so in our approach, we have come up with a couple of approaches and strategies. First of all, we have to be super, super realistic at what is employable within the sector. So when government set local employment targets, we've set it at 90%. We're now undergoing a detailed mapping process where we really try and understand for each of the engineering infrastructure buckets that we have, which amount to 16, which of those jobs are the most critical for us. So we need to understand the demand side properly, and then we need to do a national skills audit in order to sit down with government and come up with realistic numbers. So that's the first one. Secondly, I think in our skills development endeavors, we need to strike a balance between how do we meet the short-term needs of the project, but equally support the government in building the ecosystem for the long-term development of the sector. And that balance, I think, is going to help us immensely to just ensure sustainable growth of the sector. And then coming back to those 16 engineering infrastructure components, I think it's important that we prioritize. We talk about skills development as just everything. In the Namibian context, let's look at wind and solar as an example. They're incredible large numbers of, we will have between 500 and 600 wind turbines installed, and kilometers of solar panels. So let's focus on those jobs and let's start prioritizing them. And then we've included guiding principles in our contract with the Namibian government where we talk about collaboration, because we're trying to do something incredibly difficult and we cannot do it alone. And so this is why we're here, because we're talking now collaboration more globally, but that's really important. Recently, the government took a very important step to establish a task force for Namibia around skills development, and that task force will actually develop the green skills strategy for Namibia, and that's really key. So when we talk about the global initiative, there are various ways, and I'm going to touch just quickly. We do need to look at how do we enable cross-border the development of the 67,000 skills. There are entities in various jurisdictions that are interested, so we need to think about scaling up internship programs and apprenticeship programs cross-border. And then the softer issues of how do you deal with the language barriers, how do we deal with the visa processes, how do we deal with cultural integration, and so on and so on. So there's a lot more here, but thank you for the opportunity.
Toni, thank you so much for giving us a detailed snapshot of what's happening in Namibia. Also, the ambition of setting up a company that is same size as the GDP. I love that. Finally, we have State Secretary Jochen Flasbarth, who has been thinking about development climate for a long time. And I just want to say this is not connected to this forum, but Jochen is instrumental for all of us being here for this whole forum. So thank you for bringing us together. Jochen, please.
Thank you, Annie. And before I start, just let me say how breathtaking wonderful it is to have you all here. It's really amazing. And it's especially wonderful that we have this session here on skills and jobs. It was hugely underestimated for a long, long time. And I think we need to put it right at the center of the whole transition and transformation debate. In the past, it was too often that we designed policies in our countries, also in enterprises, focusing on how to come from here, from fossil to there, climate neutral. And then we started to look what to do with the workers, and we started to have the discussions at the Petersburg dialogue in 2014, and in Katowice it was the first time at the COP when Poland put it on the spot. But still, it was how to move those workers from the old sector somewhere, maybe in early retirement on all these things. And of course, this is not attractive, it's not sexy. You need to have a vision. What do we need to do? And here, the skills and the job perspective is nothing you can optimize after you had made the major decisions in advance. So you have to think it from the beginning. And let me give you just examples on that, very concrete and very briefly. For example, I don't know who's from South Africa here, but when we started the JET-P discussion with our friends in South Africa, one of the things were to look at the potentials of renewable energy in South Africa. And then the engineers are doing their work. And then they put the facilities somewhere where nobody is living. And where no old workers were, and where no new workers will be. So, and just moving the sites a bit, of course, you might lose a bit of efficiency on the physical side, but you gain a lot of social inclusivity, and that makes things politically happen in a much better and smarter way. And now, as Toni was speaking about Hyphen, and I visited you just a couple of weeks ago, it's really amazing what's happening there. But now we have to start, you are thinking properly about how to get the workers in, how to get a big proportion of Namibian inhabitants to work for you. All this is wonderful. And it's 15,000 in Luderitz. Who has ever been there? It's a small little city. It's already a lot of city. So we need to think about the next generation. So we have to invest into infrastructure like schools to get the people of the incoming workers rightly educated for a new environment. Finally, it's not only about energy systems, it's also about, you spoke about it, ecosystems. It's, we want to restore degraded landscapes to a huge scale, coming from Montreal, but also involving the climate debates. Every idiot can plant a tree. But to restore an ecosystem, you need skilled people. It's not easy to do it. So again, we have to be very inclusive. What you said, Mia, we have to be integrated. We have to think all together, otherwise we will fail.
Thank you very much. It might be true that every idiot can plant a tree, but not enough idiots are planting trees. And not enough idiots are needed to actually make this tree grow. I just want to thank all of you for being here and for your phenomenal perspective. Thank you. Give a big hand to our fantastic panel. I just, as we close this panel, I just want to say, I mean, I don't think we should mistake this jobs and transition issue as an emerging country issue. It's actually every country faces the problem. As I finish the panel, I'll tell you a quick story. A lot of business people come and visit us. We do a lot of work with businesses. And one of the people who visited me recently was a person who's putting together a transmission line for $20 billion in the United States, the biggest private investment on transmission. So I was shocked, the size of the project. And I was asking him, my God, you're doing this, how will you raise the money? $20 billion for transmission. Transmission is not a very easily fundable thing. And he told me, which shocked me more, he said, money is not the problem. I said, what is your problem? He said, people and permits. So think about that for a minute. This is the United States. This is the most investments going on there that every country will face. Let's not think this is just a developing country problem. This is a problem that unifies us. But we are here in Hamburg to build new alliances. That's the mission that's been given by us, by Jochen and others. So the question is, as you heard from everyone from different perspectives, what the big gaps are. But the question is, how do we come together and build alliances that can break these barriers and to do what we need to do? So we have a phenomenal closing speaker for us. You're looking very nervous. Ingrid Hoven, the Managing Director of GIZ. Ingrid's been working on development issues and climate issues. She was actually an instigator for setting up the NDC-P that Pablo actually runs now. Ingrid, please.
Yeah, thank you, Annie, for setting the bar that high. That's encouragement. No, great. So I was supposed a little bit at the end of this session, perhaps briefly summarize what we have heard from the speakers, and these are only snapshots. So Jennifer started by saying, look, we really have to make sure that the future, when we implement climate plans, we have to bring together the economic, the social, and the climate sphere. We have to work in a whole of government approach. Then we have heard from actually Anna how to deal with those human capital challenges when you embark on a very complex and challenging industrialization strategy, a new one that would provide jobs and opportunities for your young population. And additionally, you have reminded about it's about people. People-centered approaches are core, either by restoring ecosystem or when we do the big transition. Pablo has reminded us that we have now a moment in time where we can seize a big opportunity. We are all together, North and South, embarking and elaborating more ambitious NDCs. And those NDCs should be more inclusive, as Mia Seppo has underlined. So it's not only about actually the CO2 savings that we can achieve, the energy transition, but we should really look what are the enablers, what are the enabling conditions, and this relates to skills, to knowledge transfer, to women. We shouldn't leave nobody behind. And finally, Toni has reminded us we can't actually get the equation right unless we bring the private sector on board, the demand side. Often underlined, but it's so difficult really to bring this across and make it happen. So we have to build up capacity soon. You said, we are too slow. We have to make sure that the skills fit to the demand side. And actually, you're already like a front runner by creating a task force in Namibia and trying also to address, this is a very important and amazing issue, cross-border challenges and the enablers that you need. So how do we move from here? Wouldn't it be good really to work across the aisles, to combine the climate and development agenda and take in the NDC process as an entry point? Or climate action plans are now being elaborated, or perhaps sectoral action plans, for instance, to make an agriculture sector more climate friendly. So shouldn't we use actually these processes to give those countries that are interested in combining the climate and the skills agenda, to give them like support? I'm not saying a hand, but perhaps to provide the analytical tools that are needed, the forward-leaning analytics that you need in order not only to work on the labor market for today, but for the labor market within 20 years, as Jochen Flasbarth has underlined. It's not about only this generation, but it's also about the generations to come. We could seize the opportunity of the NDC. Secondly, we could start to develop implementation plans for green skilling. And of course, they have to be tailor-made. Each country is different. Each country departs from a different perspective. And it has, of course, to be country-driven. We have actually, because also we as GIZ and WRI and others that are part of this initiative, this joint efforts, we are working in many countries. And when we reached out to a couple of countries, governments, they said, well, this is really an opportunity, and we would like to work with you together. So we are going to work with, I don't want to call them champion countries, but they are champion countries because they seize the opportunity, and we are going to provide, this is the idea, technical assistance and catalytic finance, so that they are put in a position really to understand what are the local job opportunities embedded into a more ambitious NDC, what kind of skills development plans are needed, and how can I fill the gap that it's out there? Are there tools that are perhaps more economically wise than others? And I think we also have to make sure that then, of course, we embed those transition strategies for the skilling into the broader strategies the country has elaborated in transforming their economies and their societies so that they can be more climate resilient and climate friendly. At the end, what we need, of course, is the mobilization of more resources to make it happen. But we see a big opportunity when those plans are more robust and concrete, as Pablo has underlined, that there are opportunities from the different vehicles that are out there for climate finance, really to mobilize the support that is needed. As we are at the very start of this thinking and to put the green skilling agenda much more to the forefront, we still need that we have to underline the case for action. And so we are going to invite also you to work with us on this agenda. We are going to elaborate more think pieces that would underline that the course for action is really good for the planet and for people. So please feel free to join us, to join this joint effort, either when you're already engaged in the NDC process or when you're engaged in the education sector in different countries. I think we have a big opportunity ahead of us. It's doable, it's really within reach, so let's do it together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ingrid. I think from now on, all sessions should be 45 minutes. We have gotten so much done, don't you think? As we close, I just want to leave you with this thought. I mean, climate change is the existential problem we all face. But as you heard this morning and from now, that this is not just changing carbon in the atmosphere, it is actually changing the root cause of carbon, which is the economy we have. The economy we have today is a fossil fuel-based economy that has taken 200 years to build. We need to change that in the next 25 years, so there is urgency to this. But this change in urgency will not happen if you don't have people to actually fuel that economy. And it's not just people who will lose jobs. Jochen talked very eloquently about this, but also the new job. The science says there are far many new jobs and people will lose jobs, but we need to make sure right people get this job. You know, this year, the year we are in right now, more than 50% of the world's population went to election and will go to election. And you can see, you all read newspapers, what's happening in these elections. If the transition or the climate policy is not good for people, if people don't get benefit from it, this transition will not happen. So this is an existential central issue for us to think about how does the transition actually not only fuels the growth we need, but actually gets to the people who will benefit from it so we get more ambitious climate policies. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for a fantastic panel.